Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'll call this school board meeting for Independent School District 544 to order. And first item of business then is to establish quorum. Clerk.
Kirby Anderson.
Here.
Natalie Knudsen.
Here.
Melanie Cole.
Present.
Matthew Lemke.
Here.
Missy Hermes, present. Stephen Biggessa.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
All right, and a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, the agenda is approved. I'll read a resolution on acknowledgements. Thank you to Barry and Pamela Betcher for their donation to the Otter Angel account, which is an account created to anonymously assist families unable to pay for student meals. And thank you to the Minnesota COVID-19 pilot program, Ottertail County Public Health, and Thrifty White for their exceptional assistance in providing COVID vaccinations to our staff. So I will offer that resolution and move for its adoption. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? All right, clerk, please take the roll.
Natalie Knudsen.
Yes.
Melanie Cole.
Yes?
Matthew Lemke.
Yes.
Missy Hermes, yes. Stephen Biggessa.
Yes.
Kirby Anderson.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted.
Very good, thank you. Tonight we have board members reporting on their collateral duties. We will begin with Kirby Anderson and his reports on the 544 Education Foundation and our Finance Committee.
Okay, we have nothing on the Finance Committee, but on the 544 Foundation, we did meet on February 11th via Zoom, and it was reported that we have, the foundation has 1.46 million in total assets and equity. It's interesting how the investments go up and down. I mean, Steve knows this, he's a banker, but we're down just about 13,000 in January, but for the 7 months prior to that, or including that month, we were up 123,000. So it's, they go up, they go down, and it's a good mix of investments that they have to reflect the risk level that they want to have in that kind of an entity. They did pay out $12,500 in scholarships in the last month. The second major donor newsletter just went out 2 weeks ago. There will be no retired staff reunion this spring, maybe this fall. It's like a COVID thing. Also, the Distinguished Alumni and Hall of Fame thing is to be determined yet. Not really sure if we're going to have that. And the all-school reunion is also on hold because we kind of got a little radio silence from the city on the Bigwood Arena, or the Bigwood meeting space. Sounds like they are in the process of hiring a management firm, I think, right this month. So we'll see what happens there. And the Legends Golf Tournament is still on for July 9th. The only other things on the foundation, our foundation manager, Mindy Feuder, is gone this week, and from the 11th to the 17th, and this next week, and I think our president, Nick Narati, is gone as well. So we'll have no March meeting, and that's all I have for the foundation, unless there's any questions.
All right, thank you. As far as my board reports, Region 1 and activities did not meet within the last month, so no reports there. Special Education Cooperative had an executive board meeting today and talked about the types of auditing done by the state to assure quality of the cooperative, and so there is an upcoming type of audit that they're engaged in right now. Other than that, personnel moves and the director is planning her end of the year site visits, and that was really kind of the gist of that meeting. So, any questions about any of that? All right, we'll continue on with Missy Hermes.
Okay, the policy committee has not met, but the staff development committee met on Monday, February 1st. And that was a good meeting, especially getting ready to plan for the staff development march in service on March 26th. That's coming up. And the one in February was a good prep to see what works and what doesn't for technology, et cetera, setting up rooms, having room hosts and things like that. What's interesting about this year that makes it different from other years is that instead of giving funds out to individuals who are going to individual workshops, et cetera, we've been able, and because most of those workshops are not taking place, or else they are taking place via technology, so some of the expenses that we would normally see, like mileage or hotel or meals, those don't exist. And even getting a substitute teacher isn't necessary in a lot of cases. And so this has opened up some funding for staff development that maybe we wouldn't have had in the past. We're able to pay for a speaker. And so some of the speakers that they're talking about include Barbara Clark, who is speaking about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And that's different. I learned, when I was in teacher training, it was called fetal alcohol syndrome. But now they're just like on autism spectrum, there's a fetal alcohol spectrum as well. And so to give teachers and parents, whoever wants to go to that, some information about that. That same person would, Barbara Clark, would probably speak on trauma-informed strategies for educators. And then, let's see, what was the other one? And then that one that was really interesting, because this was brought up, Steve, you'll remember this in the curriculum, strategic planning, was talk about a makerspace. And so one of the speakers that they are getting probably from Lakes Country Service Co-op staff is on what is involved in creating a makerspace. So that is pretty much that. It looks like a really great in-service day coming up in March. The topics are all, because there's also our own staff that are teaching classes too, like Mrs. Anderson on work-based learning and just a variety. I think technology, Jessie Thorstad is going to do some technology workshops or something. That's coming up.
All right. Any other questions for Missy? Hearing none, Natalie Knudsen.
Wellness meets tomorrow, so I have nothing to report there. And then buildings and grounds, Lincoln School project is probably top priority right now. So Jeff will be speaking on behalf of that. So not much to talk about.
All right. Very well. We'll move on to Matthew Lemke.
Lakes Country Service Co-op Board, we meet on Thursday, so I have nothing to report at this point in time on them. On the Minnesota High School League, I had reported before about what they kind of gone through with just the tournaments. One thing I just wanted to talk about real quick, because I didn't think I had mentioned this before, is track and field. They did approve track and field classification, going to a 3-class system. So knowing that it's been a 2-class system for, I think, forever, basically, in the state of Minnesota, they're going to now move to a 3-class system. So that will be happening here. This is the year that you do your regional realignments and the competitive sections and districting and all that, and football realignment. And so this is the year that they work on to get it set for the following 2 years. So that's for the Minnesota High School League. Otherwise, they do not meet the board unless they're called upon until about mid-April. So that's all I would report.
Any questions from Matt? Okay, Steve Biggshaw.
I'm going to defer my meet and confer report to Superintendent Drake because I did not meet or confer with I wasn't able to make the meeting. The curriculum review committee met, and I know Superintendent Drake touched on this in the last board meeting, but I just wanted to add a couple of things. So we heard from math, and I guess the gist that I got from math is that we're doing for elementary, they have this program called elementary math, or everyday math, which they've had for quite a while, and they do this thing called spiraling. So you'll work on fractions for a bit, and then you'll go to something else, and then you'll go to something else, and then you'll come back to fractions. And so they're trying, the idea is to spend a little bit of time on each subject before spiraling back to it. And I think it's about split on whether or not this is effective, and I don't know if it comes down to the how it's taught or whatever. But one thing I did get out of the meeting is that there is a lot of need for supplementation for this curriculum. It's outdated. It needs a refresh, and I think it's due soon, if I'm not mistaken, in the next couple of years for a refresh, anyways. And also we've been talking about differentiation of the instruction for our gifted and talented learners, and again, that's something that has to be supplemented heavily by the teachers. So ideally, we can find a curriculum that doesn't need so much supplementation. And kudos to our teachers for finding things and making things work to those standards. In the secondary math, one course I found that was interesting was a course that they added called Senior Math Refreshers. So my understanding is you have a certain number of math courses you can take, but your senior year, a lot of students can forego math, but the Senior Math Refreshers is there just to help them, because once they hit college, they have to take more math. It's kind of a cool course. It's not required, but it's something that they started adding the past couple of years. I think it's been. We also heard from Mike Ebevold, Title I. And I didn't realize this, but there's actually about 280 kids being served for Title I and the access thing. And it's a great program. There's really not much to add that Superintendent Drake didn't talk about last time. In terms of legislative, I don't like to report on bills being introduced because some of them don't make it through. But the budget projections came out with instead of a $1.3 billion deficit, we're looking at a $1.6 billion surplus, and that sounds great. But with an asterisk, given the fact that there's been a loss in need to fund education because we've lost kids to different homeschooling, private school. So it's not the greatest thing. It does mean that they spend less money on education, they spend less money on childcare, and they are banking on some federal aid, which isn't quite here yet. There are quite a few districts that are in need of aid, which it's not so much us. I mean, we're doing a lot better than expected given the circumstances, and I think it's great that we've managed our money well in this district and aren't in the hurt box like a lot of districts are. 92%, in fact, are reporting deficit spending right now. On the federal side, we've all heard about the Recovery Act being passed by the Senate with some changes that are back in the House. And that debate is going to start tomorrow. Hopefully, President Biden will be able to sign by the end of the week. With that, in regards to education, they're earmarking about $125.8 billion for K-12 education. 87.5 of that should go directly to schools. $20 billion of that's going to be going to what we call learning loss, which this year has been a tough year for the students and staff, just having to, we don't know the effects of how do you put it, how the education of these kids is slow, based on a normal year. So there's going to have to be some dealings with that, and they're going to throw some money at it. As far as my reports, that is about it for my reports.
Any questions for Steve?
Just on the math one, just real quick on the supplement, so the teachers talk about, because they always have to supplement any curriculum because no book that we get from Texas or that's produced maybe from Texas because it's one of the larger states.
Yeah.
Always has what? Do they say? Do we supplement more than we have in the past? Because I know that other math curriculums we had a huge amount of supplementing going on.
Yeah, I don't think
before
there's a
everyday
perfect
math.
curriculum that covers absolutely everything, but I think it's the message that I was getting from the teachers, and I asked a lot of questions about it, and they're supplementing a lot, it's about time for a refresh. Is the message I was getting. If that answers your question, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? I will have a report then from Superintendent Drake.
All right, good evening. Several thank yous. I want to show my appreciation to the staff during these parent-teacher conference days for extending an invitation to families via Zoom, virtual, or coming in person to build those relationships and to help support the learning of their children. I also want to thank all of our community partners and our staff for all the work that went into the vaccination pilot site. And we received a very, very nice letter from Otter Tail Public Health and the county as well for our partnership in making that a very successful pilot. I want to thank our staff for putting together the Scholastic Book Fair and the work that goes into that. Helping our students with those book purchases and increasing literacy is one of the factors that has us conducting our meeting here tonight. So, and the other thank you that I wanted to extend is to Mary Madison and the Driver's Ed program. I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we will be a provider for the Class D knowledge test for students, and that will be much appreciated by our community because it's going to save them some drive time, etc., and getting that taken care of. Several congratulations. The district was recognized by the United Way of Otter Tail and Wadena counties for being in the top 10 for employee donations for the 2020 campaign. And we had some really nice sports things come up over the last couple of weeks. Congratulations to the Otter Boys hockey team and Coach Donahue on their first Central Lakes Conference hockey championship. So the plan is that the team will be presented with their conference trophy coming up this Thursday with their home game. We had 4 Central Lakes Conference performers of the week. In girls hockey, it was Maddie Halter. Boys basketball, Dominic Aguilar. Girls Nordic skiing, Anna Erickson. And boys swimming, Sean Edmond. And at this point, now that we're into March and the tournaments and state activities, sports, knowledge bowl, speech, all those kinds of things are gearing up, and want to wish everyone good luck in the upcoming contests. Social studies. So we'll dive into this a little bit. The social studies review and revision of standards has become a fairly hot topic in Minnesota. And there's a lot of information going out, some of it misinformation. So I'm going to try to set the stage a little bit for the process that's going on and clear up some misconceptions along the way, hopefully as well. So the fact that the state is reviewing the social studies curriculum
This is part of the state's ongoing process that they, every so many years, there's a set calendar for it, and the various curriculums are reviewed by the state, and they make a decision on changes that need to be done moving forward. These decisions or recommendations are made by getting the input from a large committee and also by seeking public input. So it's a pretty extensive process. The committee doing social studies is made up of 38 members across Minnesota. They are parents, they're licensed classroom teachers, they're licensed school administrators, school board members, post-secondary institution faculty that would teach in this area, and business community members. The first early draft of the standards was released in December 1st, 2020. This was never intended to be a completed document, but to elicit some early feedback. That feedback window was open from December 1st through January 4th, where public comment was encouraged. That public comment helps modify subsequent drafts of the review and revision process. Here are a couple of rumors that have surfaced that I just want to clear up. Historical United States and world events like World War II and the Holocaust are presently being taught in Minnesota schools and will continue to be taught. So those topics are not going away. The next committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 25th. Additional committee meetings are scheduled for April 8th and May 6th. All committee meetings are open to the public and may be watched virtually. The department has received significant public feedback, and they're taking that under advisement in their revisions. The final draft of the standards will not be completed until the fall of 2021. So right now it is an information gathering and feedback gathering as part of their planned process. There have been no final decisions made whatsoever, and some of the concerns that major portions of history, whether it's world history or the history of the United States, being taken out of our social studies curriculum in the future are inaccurate. So I just wanted to kind of set the record straight and explain the process that's going on. And encourage the public, if they do have questions or concerns, there are plenty of platforms and ways available to get that feedback to the Minnesota Department of Education. Regarding COVID-19, we did have 2 staff/student positive cases last week. We did 1 classroom quarantine. The county case rates per 10,000 rose very slightly to 13.1. Still, all things considered, a very, very positive number considering where we were in November and December. Lincoln School, we do plan to begin with students occupying that facility on March 22nd. Probably first half of a punch list has been created by design architects and then Doug Anderson from our staff. There are a number of items that we do want addressed before final sign-off and payment is made on that project. I will know a little bit more on this Thursday's meeting how much of that punch list work is likely to be completed by March 22nd. I think that it seems likely at this point that with some repainting of rooms, etc., some of this is going to extend past our move-in date, is what I'm understanding is most likely. I do not want, for the sake of our parents and our staff that have put a lot of time and thought into the move, I do not want to change the move-in date one more time. And that's out of courtesy both to our staff and parents and those with Children's Corner as well working on this transition. A couple of the bigger items that will still need to be done after the move-in. We'll need to hydro seed the playground. We did look at the cost of relocating early childhood playground equipment from McKinley and Mud Pie Park compared to the cost of just buying brand new equipment. And frankly, it's about a wash, so our plan would be to go forward and install new playground equipment instead of moving the other. Even with the move by certified folks, you do risk damaging the equipment in the move and subsequent installation. So this will just frankly be a lot simpler and again, roughly the same cost to just go with brand new. On the exterior of the building, we still have some caulking that needs to be rectified, and then the horizontal maroon striping on the exterior still needs to be done as well. And then again, lots of little smaller items on the interior of the building. On the strategic planning side of things, our Student Climate and Culture Committee has completed its recommendations to the school board. The Facilities Committee has had 2 meetings now. Our next meeting will actually be held at Lincoln, so that committee gets an opportunity to see the new school in that space. The first 2 meetings have primarily been providing some background information and throwing out some guiding questions for our work. On community ed, I mentioned this earlier, but our program received some special permission from the Department of Public Safety, Driver and Vehicle Services to give the Class D knowledge test to our students. And this was something that was done in lieu of our closure of the Fergus Falls Exam Center. So in terms of being convenient for our students, our driver's ed students and their families, this is a really nice move, and I appreciate Mary's work in getting this done. Our requirements will be that the students will need to have completed their classroom from our community ed program. We are able to charge a $10 fee to administer the exam, and the students can take it up to 2 times through community ed before they would have to follow with another venue. And then to finish up on Meet and Confer, primarily we discussed the school calendar for fiscal year 22, and then e-learning days came up as a discussion point as well, although that appropriately referred really to the negotiation process with the FFEA on the new 2-year agreement that could possibly begin on the contract language side this spring, but the bulk of which probably will not be engaged in until the fall. So that concludes my report unless there's any questions.
I don't hear any. Thank you, Superintendent Drake. We'll move on with our general consent items and consider for approval the minutes from our February 22nd board meeting. The bills and treasurer's report, which we'll learn more about from Kirby Anderson.
Okay. Blake and I met with Natalie before this meeting to review the bills for this month. And we also looked at the finances for the month. I'll start with finances. General fund is up about $200,000. Food service is continuing to do well, up about $65,000. Community ed also doing well, up about $35,000. So those are some of the highlights. So overall, we're up about $200,000 in the general fund. Some of the highlights on the bills, we looked at about $446,000 to Comstock on the Lincoln. We've got 2 payments of about that amount to be paid yet before it's completed after they're done with the project. We also talked a little bit about workers' comp and more Lincoln things. Cooper's provided about $70,000 worth of furniture for the Lincoln School, and that $70,000 is about 75% of what the furniture is going to be, so we still have 25% there. We have some antennas, about $4,700 in antennas that went for some scoreboards. We have Brothers Fire and Security. Every year they do the annual inspections, but they're also doing some things at Lincoln as far as sound and security indoors. Some cleaning equipment at Lincoln. Cafeteria tables, about $27,000 of cafeteria tables, and they have been delivered, and that's the total payment there. PSEO, 26,000 to the Minnesota State Community College. Some computers to OLV. We actually act as a federal funding fiscal host for Chrome, so this is for Chromebooks. So that was about $6,000. That'll be a straight pass through for us. I'm sorry, that was 9,000. And there's some HDMI speakers over here at the Area Learning Center, and that was about $6,000. And I believe that Natalie and I found all the bills and all the reports in order, and I want to thank Blake for putting it together for us. If there's any question.
Move on to HR Director, Lynn Young, to speak about our personnel needs.
Good evening, everyone. We have a number of items, and I expect as our spring ramps up here, we'll be continuing with more both resignations, retirements, and hires. So it's kind of that time of the year. Under support staff resignation, we have Arden Jono, he's a mechanical custodian. Support staff hire, Kayla Peterson, special ed para at Kennedy Secondary School. Certified staff hires and contract changes. Vicki Hahnemann is currently a long-term elementary substitute at Cleveland. Belle Johnson is a middle school music overload contract. And then Kaylee Macau, who's an IQ health teacher, has a contract increase. She increased one additional class for second semester. And then we have some retirements. We have under certified administration, we have Janet Nathan-Nygaard, an elementary teacher, sixth grade teacher that is, and Dee Monty, secondary school principal, and under support staff retirement at Lori Scogan, Title I paraprofessional. And with those three retirements, we have over 80 years of service to the Fergus Falls Public Schools, just with those three. So congratulations to all three of them, and thank you so much for the many years of service to the Fergus Falls Public Schools. And then later on, under new business, shortly I should say, there'll be resolutions for retirements. So I would recommend these for school board approval.
All right, is there a motion to approve the general consent items?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion on any of the general consent items? All in favor of approving the general consent, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, that is approved. Under new business, the first motion that we'll entertain is looking for acceptance of roofing bids for Roosevelt Education Center and Kennedy Secondary School. And so, as you can see in the narrative underneath, the Herzog roofing bid was quite a bit less expensive, and so perhaps in submitting the motion, the board member could.
Two separate bids.
Oh, they are two separate bids?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we only need one motion for those?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. I thought they were competing bids, and I'm like, what the heck is, okay, because I knew who I was gonna pick. All right, so then in making the motion, if the board member would just note the two different contractors and the bid amounts that make for the most thorough rectification. So, is there someone who would make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right. And is there, just to add a little bit, as written with the Herzog roofing at $61,760, the Buttweiler's Dual at $216,280. Is that your intent?
I'll clarify that. So the motion is to accept the recommendation that we accept project 2 from Herzog Roofing for $61,760 and project 3 from Buttweiler's Dual for $216,280. Grand total of the project $278,040.
Oh, thank you for
Yep.
doing that. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, Blake and I talked about this a little bit during our earlier meeting today, and we did go out on bids, and so we are not reballasting all the sections because we were getting away from the reballasting. It's less weight. If we don't do the reballasting, it's also less chance of roof damage, so it's kind of the way to go. And we did go with 2 bids on each of these projects. The Herzog one that we're talking about was about 50% less than the other one. And then the other one flipped the other way. The Butler's one was about 40% less, 30%, 35% less than the other one. So pays to go out for bids. I think we're getting a good deal by splitting the projects and saving the district taxpayers. So thanks for that.
Just to add, from the reason why we did the different projects was portions of the roofs that we were going out for bid on required different material. Some cases a better material, just to make sure the roof is getting the best, most secure roof possible. That's why we end up splitting and ended up getting two really good options that fell pretty close to where we were looking at from a budget standpoint. So, really happy with the results.
All right, I appreciate the additional information, that's good.
And I think our original ballpark estimate for this whole project was right around 275, so we're really close to that. So it's good.
Any other questions or discussion regarding the motion? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, that is approved, and I'll demask for this. Next item on the agenda is a resolution on the retirement of Dean Monkey. Whereas Dean Monkey began his employment with Fergus Falls Public Schools in July 1997. And whereas Dean's been a valued employee with Fergus Falls Public Schools for the past 24 years, and whereas Dean has done an excellent job as middle school and secondary principal for the district, and now therefore be it resolved by Fergus Falls School Board to thank Dean Monkey for his 24 years of dedicated service to Fergus Falls Public Schools. Would someone offer that resolution and move for its adoption?
I'll offer the resolution for its adoption.
All right, I'll take Matt, and then would you be willing to do a second? Steve? And
Can I read the one for Janet Athens Nygaard?
Sure. Will you, any discussion on Principal Monkeys?
Just a comment. With all of the retirements today, I mean, there are some big shoes to fill. In particular with Dean, I've dealt with him as a board member and as a parent. And I've had nothing but good interactions with Dean over the years. And I think that it's going to, when someone retires that has this much experience and responsibility, I mean, we'll have to have a couple people to replace what he's doing, and so he'll definitely be missed. And I just really appreciate what he's done over the years as very full list. So, thank you, Dean.
Any other comments or questions? Clerk, will you please do the roll?
Melanie Cole,
Yes?
Matthew Lemke,
Yes.
Missy Burns, yes. Stephen Biggessa,
Yes.
Kirby Anderson.
Yes.
Natalie Knudsen.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted.
Thank you. Next item is a resolution on the retirement of Lori Scogan. Whereas Lori Scogan began employment with Fergus Falls Public Schools in October 1991. Whereas Lori's been a valued employee with Fergus Falls Public Schools for the past 30 years. And whereas Lori has done an excellent job as a Title I paraprofessional for the district, and now therefore be it resolved by Fergus Falls School Board to thank Lori Scogan for her 30 years of dedicated service to Fergus Falls Public Schools. Will someone offer that resolution and move for its adoption?
Offer the resolution for its adoption.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, and any discussion or comments? Questions? Clerk?
Matthew Lemke,
Yes.
Missy Burns, yes. Stephen Biggessa,
Yes.
Kirby Anderson.
Yes.
Natalie Knudsen,
Yes.
Melanie Cole.
Yes?
The resolution is adopted.
All right, and the next item is a resolution on the retirement of Janet Athens Nygaard, and Missy, take it away.
Whereas Janet Athens Nygaard began her employment with the Fergus Falls Public Schools in August of 1993, and whereas Janet has been a valued employee with the Fergus Falls Public Schools for the past 28 years, and whereas Janet has done an excellent job as an elementary teacher for the district, now therefore be it resolved by the Fergus Falls School Board to thank Janet Athens Nygaard for her 20 years of dedicated service to Fergus Falls Public Schools.
All right, I'll offer that resolution for its adoption. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion, questions, comments?
Janet is a fantastic social studies teacher. We were lucky to have her. She was a teacher in the Mills before she moved here. And I think she grew up here.
Great. Any other comments? Otherwise, clerk, please take
Okay. Stephen Biggessa.
Yes.
Kirby Anderson.
Yes.
Natalie Knudsen.
Yes.
Melanie Cole.
Yes.
Matthew Lemke.
Yes.
Missy Hermes, yes. The resolution is adopted. Second.
Kirby.
Thank you. Resolution is adopted.
Very well, thank you. That concludes our agenda. We'll have a board work session as always. Tonight we'll talk about the next year's school calendar, about the student climate and culture strategic planning that Superintendent Drake referenced in his report, talk about vendor usage and personnel. So with that, we'll be back, we'll be having our next meeting on, when is it? Monday, March 22nd at 5:15, back at the Media Center. Would someone offer a motion to adjourn? All right, and a second?
Second it.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any discussion on adjournment? All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.